everybody. My name is Kristen. I'm one of the child life instructors for the UC Santa Barbara program, but I am a certified child life specialist and have been I'm on my year 25. So I've been doing this for a long time. Excited to talk to you about our program, the Pathway to Child Life, and I'll let Kaylee introduce herself.
Hi there, my name is Kaylee. I am also one of the instructors. I primarily teach a grief and loss class as well as a child life preparation class, which you'll hear a little bit about tonight. I'm also the internship coordinator for UCSB, so I work a lot with different hospitals and students to kind of um, figure out affiliations and things like that, which you'll hear more about tonight. We're excited to teach you a little bit more. Thanks for being here.
All right, so today we're going to answer your questions best we can. Kaylee and Sunny are going to be on the side, so if there's any questions, I think there's a little question box, or is there a chat box somewhere?
Yes.
Um,
Q&A, and please, even as we're going, we're gonna
yeah,
answer them the best of that we can, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. So we'll answer those. We'll answer some questions at the end because we have a feeling a lot of people have the same questions. But we're going to talk about all these things. We're going to do just a child life overview, the pathway to become child life certified, an overview of our program, the courses that we offer, a little bit about those. I'm going to let Kaylee talk about the prep class and the affiliation process, and then we're just going to continue to answer your questions throughout the next hour. So, hopefully, you all know what a child life specialist is. This is just a quick overview of being a certified child life specialist. In summary, our job is to reduce trauma associated with stressful experiences. So, you'll primarily find us in the children's hospitals or hospital environment, but we do work in schools, dental offices, and the community around us. So, we are looking to just promote safety and security with kids in the hospital. All right. But you all should know that by now. All right, so this is the pathway, the roadmap to child life, and we're going to go through each of these individually. So, step one is really starting that eligibility assessment, which I'll go into. And I actually called the ACLP this morning just to make sure I still knew the steps because the whole portal changed. And so, I wanted to make sure that I knew all of that information for you guys today. We'll talk about the coursework, the pre internship experiences, the internship itself, as well as the exam. This is the pathway. So I think today we're really just talking about kind of up to the internship. The exam's a whole different beast. So the eligibility assessment. So just updated this information today. I confirmed with Barb over at ACLP that the eligibility assessment is step one. And she does encourage people to start submitting that right away. So for example, if you went to school at the University of Miami and you took some child development classes, you took maybe a research class, and you want to know if those classes count, then you would go ahead and submit those courses to the ACLP with the transcript for that university. So you'll go ahead and submit those ahead of time so that you can at least see what you need. So it can be started anytime. You pay the $80 fee and you can just keep adding to it as you go along. So the way to do that is to navigate to the ACLP website, which is www.childlife.org. Pretty easy to find. It is a little bit of a new website, so I know Kaylee and I are still also trying to navigate some of the newness. But Barb swears at ACLP that it's much easier to navigate. So she said, go and make an account. You'll go to your profile, and this is where you'll pay the $80 fee to have them just start collecting your information for the eligibility assessment. There's a start here, she said, where there's a certification portal. So Kaylee and I cannot see what you see because we're already certified, so we don't have to do this part. So we're kind of just walking through the process of what we have learned. So then what you'll do is when you get into that certification portal, there's two pathways. There's the endorsed program or there's the coursework program. And because you're kind of if you are coming from us at UC Santa Barbara right now, you're going to go through the coursework section. So the endorsed programs are programs like, which ones are endorsed? Like Loma Linda's probably endorsed.
Azusa
What else?
Pacific. There are programs that are typically degree earning that are
Mhm.
endorsed right now.
Right. So for us, coursework is going to be the way to go. When you're submitting your courses, All of our courses are pre-approved. We did the work already to get these courses pre-approved. The only course that you need to verify, and that's for everyone, is that Child Life Theory course. We do prefer that you send it electronically through the eligibility assessment. There's a form. I get a lot of submissions for the forms, and I send it back to you and I say, just send it to me through the eligibility assessment. It's so much faster because with the form, I have to print it out or put it into Adobe, fill everything out. It's just so time consuming. And to do so many of those every quarter can be pretty challenging. So the eligibility assessment, I literally check some buttons and sign my name, and that's a wrap on that. So just for that course, myself and usually there's one or two others of us that teach the theory class. So there is a preference to have that done electronically. So once you choose your path and you start submitting your courses, you also have to upload the transcripts have to be official, right, Kaylee? Yes. So they,
Currently, and there is a hope in the near future of it moving to be unofficial transcript because of cost, right? Like,
mhm. Yeah.
but right now it is official transcript only.
Right. So it's uploading all of those transcripts. So like I was saying, if you have taken courses elsewhere, if you were from University of Washington or whatever, go ahead and submit those because maybe your child development counts. Maybe that research class that you have counts. And then you wouldn't have to take an additional course, the same thing. So that could be great for you to not have to take so many courses.
I
So
had a,
that's stuff.
I had a couple more things to
Yeah.
add to that really quick. Um, there might be classes that actually really would count that maybe don't have the title that is specific to what you need. For example, students might have taken a child development class, but it doesn't state in the child development class what the ages were of that class, that focus, right? Some classes are birth through 8 years, some are adolescent, some are infant, whatever. If it doesn't state exactly child development birth through 18 years, you might get a decline if it just says child development, but don't stop there because if you can prove that you covered certain ages within that course by uploading your syllabus or something specific about a course description, then you're able to kind of appeal that. So I would say more oftentimes than not, students don't have too many issues because again, if you're uploading our classes, they're all pre-approved. You don't have to fight for approval for any of them. But when it comes to, like Kristen was mentioning, like uploading your, courses that you have taken while getting your bachelor's degree or a graduate degree or what have you, then you might get a decline, but I don't just assume you have to retake a class. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where I'm happy to talk with you and kind of take a look at those and advocate for you not having to pay more money for extra classes.
Right. There is a question in the chat, and I think that when I respond, it goes back to the panelist here. So, but the question is, do we need to wait until we finish classes to go and add coursework, or do we add coursework that's currently in progress? It is my understanding you need to wait until after the course is complete.
You can add them, but it would not make sense for you to upload you have to do an official transcript. So
Hmm.
for your peace of mind, if you want to just put it in there because you know you're going to be taking it next fall or whatever, you can have it in there. It doesn't really impact one way or the other. It might help you to sort out, oh, I'm meeting this requirement by taking this class or this requirement taking this one. But I definitely wouldn't send a transcript until you are done with that program, right? You might be taking 5 classes with us at UCSB, and I wouldn't upload an official transcript after every single class. I would wait until you're done. Does that make sense? Like you don't want to be but think of this as like this portal is for you, right? So even though it sounds like you're like you pay the fee one time and no matter how many classes you put, you don't have to pay again, right? This is like for you and tracking what courses, and then when you're ready to submit it, then it's going to be able to you'll be able to here's another question. Not sure when the best one to ask this, but I'm hoping to hear about pros and cons of taking classes through UCSB and masters. We'll get to that for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to that for sure. There's some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to let Kaylee hit those up while we carry on. So So the courses that you need for child life, there are 10 classes that you need to take. The one course taught by a child life specialist, which is the child life theory class, the two child development courses, a family systems course, a play course, a loss and bereavement, death and dying, research course, and then three additional related areas. Um, and so I'm going to go into detail about our courses in just a moment. I just want to get through the clinical experiences first. I'm going to minimize this Q&A real quick. Okay, there we go, because I can't see. So the clinical experiences, this is something that you're going to do while you're doing your coursework, just to get some experience in the field, to learn more about children, to be able to connect your child development, the theory that you're learning, to those interventions that we do with children. So there's several ways that you can get some pre-internship experiences. There's on the ACLP website, there's some ACLP pre-internship modules. And that just goes through some exercises, some learning opportunities about child life. I definitely recommend taking a look at them. I would not replace that with doing some in-person experiences. So for like example, my the Child Life Practicum that I offer at UCSF, we use the pre-internship modules in that practicum. So that's part of our program. We just use them hand in hand. The other thing that I 10 out of 10 recommend is to start volunteering as soon as possible. Getting some experience working with children. You can also do work experience. I know a lot of students who have worked in preschools and daycares and summer camps. Those are fantastic experience to really learn about children, child development, face-to-face, hands-on. But I also want all of you to try to get some experience in a hospital. Those are the standout students. Those are the ones that can really connect the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Once you get closer to internship, you're going to really start to learn about those, connecting those to the interventions because it can be overwhelming working in a hospital. It can be, it's just tough. It's a hard place to work. And if you've never set foot in a hospital, it's going to be a difficult experience. And I only accept applications at my hospital from 4 universities. And I still received 50 applications this round. So it is very, very competitive and you want to stand out as much as possible. So getting some volunteer experience, trying for a practicum if you can. The practicum is more of an observational experience, so it is something that you have to apply for, get accepted to. Our practicum at UCSF, we get maybe 15 applications. It's not overly competitive. However, you still have to apply for it, interview, and get a position for it. So it is more of an observational. You'll get some opportunities to do some bedside play with children. In a hospital setting, which is really important to have, in my opinion, when you're applying for internship. Kaylee, do you want to say anything else about the clinical experiences and all this stuff?
No, I think that's great. Yeah.
Okay, groovy. We will move right along. I keep So UCSB, this is where we're going to kind of answer that question about, us versus a graduate program. You know, graduate school is always great. The thing about graduate school is if you have later on down the road, you decide you maybe want to be a manager or you want to be a director level, you're going to need a master's degree. But you don't need to have a master's degree to be a child life specialist. I was a child life specialist for a very long time without having a master's degree. I didn't go back until I was 40 to get a master's degree, and I'm kind of old now. I'm not going to tell you how old, but I am significantly up there. So I waited a long time in my career before I went back to school. So you don't have to have a master's degree. And graduate school is expensive. So we have found in California, there's only 3 other schools that graduate programs, and they're all private schools. So it is expensive. So that's why we're here. We're here to give you the support, the education, and the experiences that you may need to be a child life specialist without having to go to graduate school. So it is perfect for students who have finished their bachelor's degree, who want to do this field after, thinking they wanted to do something else and kind of coming back. We also recommend our courses for others in the healthcare environment, having child life assistants take classes. I have a person on my team who has stepped off the field to be a mom for many years, and she actually came back and took our child life theory class just as a kind of a refresher to get back into the field. Our medical providers sometimes take our classes. I have a lot of school teachers who want to come back and be a child life specialist, so they'll come back and take our classes. Oftentimes, they already have a master's degree. So it's just for those of you who aren't quite ready to go to graduate school, don't want to go to graduate school, and just want to get the courses, but have the experience and have the support you need, because we worked really hard to create that platform where you have academic support for those clinical experiences. As someone who works in the hospital with students, I can see the difference for the students who have academic support. Internship's hard. It can be all encompassing, and having someone outside of that experience to talk to work with, to just have on your side is imperative, in my opinion. So that's a little bit about why I think we're such a great program. But let's talk a little bit about the courses that we offer. So the ones that are in blue at the bottom are are considered the elective classes that we offer. The ones that are in the darker blue are the required classes that you need in those that group of 10. And so I think the next slide shows when we have them in the quarters. UC Santa Barbara is on a quarter system, so 4 times a year there's a mix of these classes. So we have the intro class of theory, child life theory. This is really an overview of the profession. The textbook is super thick, so we do everything we can to get through it. And the weeks that we have early childhood development as well as adolescent development, because you do need 2 child life development classes. They are best if they're split up. We have the family systems course, which examines family dynamics and community impact on children. The play class, which is one of the classes that I teach as well. We talk a lot about therapeutic play in healthcare. We have a lot of fun in that class. Come join us. Death, Dying, and Grief is Kaylee's primary class that she teaches, where we talk about just supportive strategies for working with children around death and dying. And then the research course has to be like the all-encompassing research, not just one type of research. So that's why sometimes if you have taken a research at another course or another school, it might be very streamlined and they want a little bit more of it all-encompassing. And then we have the 4 courses that are considered are elective courses. I recommend every single one of them. I think they're all fantastic. I think that you would make a better, well-rounded child life specialist with all of these classes. So in my opinion, I think all 4 of them matter. So the first one's assessment preparation, medical terminology. So this is really just diving into assessing children, taking all that child development knowledge and putting it to practice, preparing that medical preparation. What does that truly look like? How do you use your child development? How do you use those assessment skills and put it all together for preparation? And of course, medical terminology, super important. I have to look up things every day, but because I have some medical terminology background, I can put things together and kind of figure things out. However, Google is super helpful for understanding information. But it also means on how do you take that medical terminology and explain it to children, how to break down information and explain it to children. Pediatric palliative care and hospice talks a lot about the principles and practices of palliative care and hospice care for children, very different than grief and loss. Children with disabilities. Because we see so many children with neurodiversity, I cannot stress how important this class is. I think it's such a wonderful, rich course for everyone to take. I personally think I need it. I want to come back and take it. And then child life and trauma. This is about intervention strategies, self-care, working with trauma-exposed children. So those are the courses that we have. And then this is when we offer them. So we just wrapped up a quarter and we are in the fall. Are we in the fall? Yes, we just started the fall. I just forgot what month it was. So in the fall, we offer Death, Dying, and Grief, the elective class, 2 elective classes, family systems, research, one of our child development classes, and then Kaylee's prep class, which we'll talk about. And then every quarter, we do offer child life supervision. If you are accepted into an internship, you would have an academic advisor. So, prep course, I'm going to pop it on over to Kaylee, talk about prep.
Yay, sorry, I'm typing away. These are great questions, guys. Thank you so much for using the Q&A chat. Okay, so our prep course. This course came about because we really wanted to be able to help kind of bridge this gap between we have so many incredible students who are extremely diverse in what they're coming, right? Even as I'm answering this in the chat, like thinking about some students, this is their second career. Some students, they've finished their bachelor's degree or master's degree and they're coming back and they're like, hey, I need to take my classes. I don't know where to get these classes. I'm going to land at UCSB. We have some students who have a lot of support outside their academic program and some who don't. So we created the prep course to kind of create these cohorts where we can meet live over Zoom and have a certain topic that we're talking about each week, where we're diving a little bit deeper, where if you're feeling like, and like literally you're not alone, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Or how do I actually do this? Or what does that look like? Or how do I apply? Or what hospital do I apply? This class is for you because we kind of deep dive into some very specific advice on you and your situation where, when Kristen is teaching her classes or Joe or Amy or all these amazing instructors who are teaching these topics don't necessarily have capacity to answer individualized advice, right? Or like, what should I do if I'm in this, I live here and this is the only hospital I have available, or I have obligation for work. This is the class where you can ask all those questions, and I'm going to be doing research on what is available for you in regards to practicums or what's available for other pre-internship experiences like a volunteer or at a camp or things like that. Each session we talk about something different. And even though this is like kind of the way that we have it laid out, we pivot because some students have questions about a topic that we really want to cover on session one. So we kind of pivot whatever we need for that exact cohort. There's typically about, I would say, 10 students that are in each class, which makes it intimate enough to where we can learn from each other. But the students are still walking away feeling like, okay, I had all my questions answered. And then my favorite part is we do mock interviews. So as I get to know you, I learn, hey, are you ready and pursuing a pre-internship experience? Are you ready for internship? And what hospitals are you interested in applying to? And I create custom questions for each individual student and do a mock interview so that we can practice what is it like to have live feedback. Kristen will agree to this. You have to be willing to take feedback, right? Like as a student, we all do. It's a really important part of being a child life specialist. So this kind of helps you practice that. And my favorite thing is at the end of it, when you get asked a question of how do you take feedback, you can say, oh, actually, did a mock interview and this is how I handled it, or this is what I learned about myself and feedback, and this is how I applied it. And then, yeah, and we'll go over the internship readiness common application. And then there's all kinds of things that we're gonna cover and learn about. But it's really for you. So whatever you feel like you need support in, that's where we kind of come together. And I love that other students are in it because some of the times I'm like, let's ask the group, what do you guys think? And then we learn from each other in that cohort. I think right now we're offering it 3 times a year. But we'll see depending on demand if we end up adding more down the road. But yeah, hope
Yeah,
to
and
see.
I can't like say enough wonderful things about this. As a person on the other side, as an internship coordinator, I can tell. I can tell the students who have gone through Kaylee's prep class, their applications look better, they interview better, they just are more prepared for the interview process. Um, and the applications, they're the end of me, but I could definitely tell the ones that have been touched by Kaylee. There's a question in the chat that didn't make it to the Q&A. And it was about courses, so I just want to make sure we touch on that. It says, do hospitals require you to be done with the 10 courses before you apply for internship, or does it differ in each hospital? For the most part, you're going to need to be done with the courses. You could have some in progress as you're applying. So like you could be taking, because applications, they were just due last week, so you could have been just wrapping up your, therapeutic play class. And there's a course in progress form that I can fill out, and so you can just include it in your application if you're applying for like winter and spring. But I wouldn't recommend starting internship applications before you get almost all your classes finished. You're just not going to be ready. It's really important to make sure that you finish those. Kaylee, do you know any different on that?
No, yeah, totally on the same page. I think the sweet spot is when maybe you have like my favorite time to work with students even in the prep class is when you have one or two classes left and I can still kind of help shape what you're looking for. But question in regards to the that form you're referring to, the course in progress, is that something they find on the eligibility assessment, do you know? Or is that something independent from that that they would send to us? Do you know?
Um, I know I just have it. Most instructors have
Yeah.
it. Um, but I'm sure it's on the website somewhere. I didn't just make it up.
I
So,
site. I searched the website and I couldn't, so I just want to make sure. So yes, we have it. I have it. Kristen has it. So if you are in
mhm,
that situation, we know we have it. But I would hope that eventually they do something similar to the course verification, where it's online and you don't have to fill out
yeah,
multiple forms. That
yeah,
the dream.
that would be nice. Somebody did ask a question in the Q&A. Can courses be taken in any order? Are there better ones to be taken together later in the program? Thanks so much for all the answers, of course. I always think you should start with the child development courses because I refer to that with that throughout all of my courses. That would be my starting place. And then the child life theory, I think grief and loss is a very heavy class, very, very heavy. Um, I don't recommend taking that class with much other classes. I don't know, Kaylee, how you feel.
I feel the same. It's a class that for I mean, not to I definitely don't want to scare anyone, but we're like I it is I it's required to kind of reflect on your own grief and your own experience and lived experience in order to know how to show up and support other people, right? So I'm tender with the topic, but if you are taking 6 classes and that's one of them, it's gonna be hard because I do require that you have a lot of reflection in that class that is not just a simple reflect on da 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 da. It's you're thinking about the experiences you've had with death and with losses in your life. But I have had students who are very, very, very interested in that class specifically to know and gauge, is this the right field for me to go in? Like I'm this is the part I'm scared about. Should I take, and so I'm happy to have you at any point in the class. You just have to be prepared mentally for what that means. And also to kind of piggyback off of the question about like the order of classes, I definitely think Kristen is correct. Like some of those foundational classes, right? Like the intro to theory and practice, like the intro class is like, you're going to get a little taste of everything in that class, which I think is amazing. Um, and then if there's a class that you're really interested in, I think take it because that'll kind of help foster that, excitement towards the program and kind of serve as a great foundation to build some of the other classes.
Yeah, perfect. Um, Lauren, there's you have a big long question in here. Let's see. I do know that Alex is on vacation. That's why I talked to Barb today. So Alex is off for a couple of weeks, so that may be why you haven't heard from him. If you've emailed that certification at childlife.org, hopefully someone else is fielding those emails. Um, but yeah, if you have to do R4 for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know what
Follow
other course.
just follow up with them. Literally just
Yeah.
follow up with them. And Lauren, if you want to, if you want to email me your eligibility assessment so I can take a look or a screenshot of it. I have a really cool, actually, I'm gonna drop it in the chat. I have this certification like course manual that we do in the prep class. You get a little sneak peek, but it helps deep dive into like what are the requirements for each class that have to be present, so you might be able to problem solve that amongst yourself, but I'm happy to take a look at it. So I'll drop that for everyone in the general chat.
Yeah. And then, yeah, we already answered the question about the courses. Okay. I think we're good here. All right. So the affiliation process, this is also kind of more Kaylee's bread and butter. But to achieve affiliation with us, or the possibility to affiliate with us, you have to have 5 courses. And that's because we need to know you a little bit better. We need to see how you are working academically. We need to be able to support you properly. The prep class that Kaylee was also talking about is not included in that 5. That's just extra. But it really is just so that we can support you better. We are doing our best to establish affiliations as much as possible, partnering with different hospitals. Kaylee, do you want to talk a little bit about your process and what you're doing to try to stay connected?
Yeah, sure. And Brooke asked a question. She said, "Are you establishing affiliation with hospitals all over US or California
Mhm.
only?" Yeah, we're doing all over United States. So the way that it's working is you have to think of it kind of like I'm picturing it like we're kind of like a like it's newer for us, right? So if we were established for and doing internships for several years, we'd have several hospitals that we were affiliated with, right? So every quarter that we have a student who's let's say accepted, well, let me backtrack. If you're a student and you have not taken 5 classes from us, you will not be eligible to be affiliated, right? So that doesn't mean you don't have options for internship. It just means you have to pursue internship sites that do not require you to have an affiliation with a university. And that's okay. And we have students who are successfully doing that track every single cycle. Um, However, if you have taken 5 classes and you are really excited about a specific hospital that requires affiliation, there's a few different things that you need to be aware of. One, if it's one that we already have created an agreement with, then that's great. You're good to go. It means we have a contract in place that covers liability and everything, all the legal stuff on both ends, and you're good to go. Um, Two, we have some hospitals that say, hey, we are willing to get an application from you, but we don't create a contract with UCSB or anyone until we accept a student. And mind you, it is fully independent on you or dependent on you to obtain an internship. So we're not placing students, we are not part of the process of selecting students, anything like that. It is all up to you independently to obtain and secure your internship on your own. Of course, we're here to support that process, but we don't have a say in that, right? That's like fully wherever you're interested in applying. That's totally up to you. But let's say it's a student who is interested in applying to a hospital and we don't have a contract with them and the hospital says they can apply to us, but as soon as they get accepted we have to work on the contract. That's all fine, but the hard part about it is contracts can take up to 6 months and sometimes longer. So if we get a student who is accepted, right, to a certain hospital that we don't have an agreement with and the hospital says yeah, let's do it, green light, but their internship starts in 3 months, that puts everyone in a pretty bad situation that we can't always, we can work as fast as we can, but it's legal teams we're talking with. This is not just me and Sunny, right? This is like the lawyers who are dealing with this on both parties, right? So you can have delays from both parties. So if there's sites that you're interested in applying to, we like to know as soon as possible, even when you're applying, and even if you haven't gotten an interview or things like that, so we can have it on our radar to either start and initiate conversations if they're willing. Most of them are not willing until you get accepted. Um, and then there's a different category of sites that say, we are not willing to receive an application until we have an agreement in place. And those are sites that Sunny and I will look at and see, is this a good fit? Is this, are we going to be able to come to an agreement? And then when we get a green light and we get legal teams on board and sign everything, then we add them to our website. So we're constantly adding to our website as we go. Um, um,
Kaylee, there's a question here that's kind of related for, it's like they heard some states,
yes.
North Carolina, about require
So
affiliation. Can you address that?
yes, totally. So that is a barrier that we have faced, and I will say, yes, UCSF is affiliated. Um, the to name it in the chat, what she's asking, essentially, there's certain hospitals that will only become affiliated with a local university. For example, Loma Linda University only accepting Loma Linda University students, Loma Linda Hospital only accepting Loma Linda students for their practicum, which tends to be the case. They open it up for internship, but it's very specific to local. They want to foster community within the local area. And so I can name a few schools that I know that about them, and those are not options for us. I have a long list of all these sites that I've talked with, and sometimes that's the case in Canada. A lot of Canadian hospitals really want to partner with their local institutions. So unfortunately, those are just areas that we have no control over, and I'm happy to have the conversation. So if it's some, you've heard of maybe North Carolina or whatever, I'm happy to meet with them and ask and try to see what we can do. I think we've changed the mind of maybe one hospital. It's mainly due to like they want to really foster local, community and kind of give their students a very specific opportunity and not have it be competitive with a bunch of different sites, which makes sense. Um, and yes, I will share my email. Yeah. Sorry. So,
Oh,
so let me summarize. I didn't do a good job. When you're interested in a certain hospital that does require affiliation, email me. I'll drop my email here and I will work one-on-one with you to let you know the status or possibility of that being an option for us. Um, and I will say I prioritize the students who are in the prep class because I'm working live with them. But I'm happy to support and answer any questions for any students. Um, and I'll drop my email for you guys in the chat.
And I do want to
um,
emphasize that we do really try to work with both legal teams in trying to make the affiliation process possible because we understand how hard and competitive it is to get offered an internship. So we do really try to prioritize that. But again, we can't control the legal team's response. There are certain provisions that UCSB will absolutely not agree. And if the hospital is not willing to work around those requirements per UCSB, then that would just be a deal breaker. And so, like Kaylee said, the best bet is to let us know which sites that you guys would want to work with, and let us know as soon as possible. Like for off the bat, like Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, they have specific requirements, and UCSB is like, absolutely not, we can't work around it. And so, unfortunately, we are not going to be able to have an affiliation agreement with Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. So that hospital is off the list. And so if you let us know, we can kind of guide you in that regard.
all right. Yes. So, Kaylee, did you want to talk about the internship supervisor course?
Yeah. Is there one more slide or is this the
No, it's just the questions.
okay? Oh, perfect. Okay. So in regards to the next step, so um let me explain a little bit more about like scaling back, big picture, why affiliation? Like why do certain hospitals require affiliation? The purpose of affiliation is to essentially basically have a guarantee that a student is going to be able to get support, academic support, and their clinical support in their internship. So the hospital's covering their bases in regards to like liability. I mentioned this in the chat. If you are required to be an affiliated, student, then and sometimes independent students too, they require you to get your own liability insurance that's covering your liability and coverage when you're a student. It's not expensive. It's usually around $40 for the whole year, so it'll cover the time that you're there. And um and students who are not affiliated doesn't mean that they're not going to get support, doesn't mean, but when you technically to be affiliated, you have to be enrolled in one course, right? And so we've created this course that's the Child Life Supervision course. Don't think of it as like a heavy academic class or anything like that. It's very different from any of the classes that we teach here. But your next step, let's say you finish your classes, you finish your degree, you've applied to UCSB, you have an interview, you get selected, you get an offer. Your next step would be, first of all, notifying Sunny and myself. And then Sunny would give you the next steps to um, be able to sign up for our internship supervision class, which then technically has you enrolled as a student. Does that make sense? You're technically still enrolled, even though, and this doesn't, there's not like an expiration date to this. Some students get nervous of like, well, what if I finish my classes, I go work for a couple years, and then I want to come and be a student? As long as you've taken 5 classes from us and we can speak to your skills and abilities, right? It's not someone who took, you know, classes and then disappeared for 15 years. Like, no, we want to be able to know who you are and advocate for you, and vouch for you. And I will say too, if you're a student who's asking for affiliation who maybe is not ready in some way, shape, or form, like you haven't done certain steps, or there's things that I'm going to be honest with you. In the prep class, there's students who I am going to be really honest because I care about you in the process. I don't want you to waste your time and money or applying to places where maybe you really need to focus a little bit more on getting some volunteer work under your belt or a pre-internship experience, like, but you're not going to be surprised by that. I'm going to name it, you know what I mean? um but after you sign up for the internship supervision course, there'll be that takes place during the entirety of your internship. So if we're a quarter system program, right? So internships are typically 16 weeks. They're 40 hours a week, full-time hours. You are not There's very, very, very few internships that are part-time. And that is something that you'll have to seek out specifically for sites that offer that specifically. But you have to plan and prepare for 40 hours a week for 16 weeks, 15, 16 weeks, depending. And they're typically not paid. Some sites do pay. But that is then something you're going to be doing the internship supervision class, which is essentially just reflection time with a supervisor at our online, like a virtual, though there might be some prompts and things for you to respond to. But it's also amazing to be able to have someone who's outside of the hospital setting. Like, let's say worst case scenario, you have a conflict with a peer or a supervisor or something in the clinical setting. You have us as the academic support to be able to debrief and make a plan on how to handle that situation. Same thing if Kristen, as a or sorry, I don't want to be confusing with her title, but let's say an internship coordinator at a hospital is having an issue where you're showing up late and they've tried to address it, and you're showing up in, in an outfit that's not appropriate or crossing a boundary or whatever happens, right? They can come to us and we can have a conversation and dialogue. One, because we know you know what I mean? And we can kind of get to the root of what's going on and help you succeed for the remainder of your internship.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat about even my hospital, UCSF, about affiliation. Yes, we do require affiliation. I know that some students on here from the San Francisco State program, however, you still would need to take 5 courses through UC Santa Barbara to be affiliated. And honestly speaking, I have found that the students who do dive in a little bit with the UC Santa Barbara program, take some of those elective courses, tend to just be better prepared for internship. The San Francisco State program is fantastic. However, this is just a little more streamlined for working in child life. And I think the more classes that you can take, the better. And you would have to be affiliated with UC Santa Barbara. We only accept from students from 4 locations: Santa Barbara, Loma Linda, Azusa Pacific University, and Laverne, which are the 3 private schools in Southern California.
There's also a question in the chat. If someone starts taking classes through UCSB and then later decides to apply to an online master's program, does the UCSB courses typically count for credit? That's totally Sunny, you can tap in here if you need to, but from my understanding, that totally depends on the program. So that is not dependent on like us and, transfer credit or things. It's totally dependent on their program and what they would count our classes. Our classes are post-bachelor's level program, your coursework, right? So a lot of them count towards, correct me if I'm wrong, graduate level, right, courses versus like undergraduate. But it doesn't mean that they're going to count if you're at an online program. And I will say, if you are at a program that is specific to child life, most of them require that you take their courses anyway. Their courses at their graduate level, like Azusa Pacific, what did you just say, Kristen?
Laverne.
Like a lot of the programs, it's a very, very specific set of coursework that is required by them. So I wouldn't say, I think there's still a benefit to taking some of our classes to really feel out if you're ready and prepared. But I've worked with students who are realizing, hey, no, I feel like I want to higher my education. I really want to specialize in something more specific, or I want to continue pursuing. And so I will be honest with you, if you're pursuing that, don't take a million classes and then have to retake, or, figure that out from the start. If there's a program you're interested in, to inquire with them first. But that's totally dependent on the university, not dependent on us. It's up to them if they choose to accept them or not.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
some, like Kaylee said, some universities will take our courses, they will count towards the credit and they'll do a transfer because our courses are, I guess they're transcribed as graduate level courses. So if you wanted to go into a master's program, some universities will absolutely accept it and some won't. It just depends on the university.
Any other questions?
Anything else for us? Feel free to reach out and email. Kaylee has her email up here. She's the best person to reach out to for all things internship. I'm happy. Oh, I see something else popping up here. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It was really nice to be able to chat with you all, learn about what you need. International students, that's a whole different beast, huh?
I could talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so
Real quick,
um,
we did
okay.
get our first international affiliation agreement from Canada. So
Woo! That's a huge deal. You guys, that is a huge deal because that, from my understanding, is we are the first program to ever have an international agreement with a Canadian hospital. That's huge. Um, Sorry. Okay, yes. Okay, so international students, we have a ton of students who are from all over the world, and it's so incredible in our classes. However, something to keep in mind is there is a very, very, very specific requirement in order for a internship program to offer student programming. You have had to have an experienced certified child life specialist for 4,000 hours, right?
To do what?
To be a supervisor of a child.
2,000 hours.
2,000. Okay. So one, not all hospitals have that in place internationally. Some hospitals have incredible programs and they're working as child life specialists, but they might not be certified because they maybe their student they're launching a program and they've never had um the opportunity to study under or have an internship under a certified child life specialist. So they're still working as a child life specialist, but they're not certified. So that is one thing that I've noticed is students have to get really creative. You kind of have to be willing to either come to the United States or come or potentially Canadian sites to be able to obtain your internship if you're and feel free to email me if you want to share exactly where you're referring to internationally. But it's not impossible. We've also had a student, and in fact, hopefully this is going to be an upcoming webinar. We had a student who was Canadian who ended up obtaining her internship in United States. And so that's like the reverse, right? Of students wanting to come in, but there were barriers and there's things like visas and things like that to work through. So it's not impossible, but it definitely takes a little bit more um time to prep and talk and make sure everything's in, you actually have the right options and opportunities in regards to internship. And like Sunny said, we've created this agreement with Canadian sites. I haven't had any inquiries about any countries outside of Canada and USA. So, but we're totally open to um learning about that. There's one more question, I think, Kristen.
Yeah, it's just asking about the supervision course that she would need to enroll. But yeah, to answer your question, correct. You would just work closely with Kaylee to get into a supervision course and take the course for that quarter. And
What
right?
Yeah, yeah. Kelsey, I'm seeing your note too here. Is there a higher chance to get an internship? It's not necessarily about like chances, because again, we are not placing you. We have nothing to do with you obtaining an internship or not, versus other than us preparing you for that experience. That, of course, we're going to be here to do. But if you think about it, if you take classes that are let's just say, and I'm not trying to like compare programs, but say you take your bachelor's classes and you get a lot of your classes covered, your child development, your family systems, a grief class, you get all these classes covered, which is great. And then you maybe come to UCSB with one class, which is Kristen's, or whoever teaches it, the Intro to Child Life, which covers, your required class to be signed and verified. Well, that's great, but if you want to talk about experience and where you're learning from, all of our instructors are certified child life specialists all over in different areas, inpatient, outpatient, some academic, some working clinically, and we are teaching your classes. We are all, even though it's only required to have one child life specialist that you've learned from under a class, all of us are. So we are all sharing. And even like, if you think about the grief and loss class, like I teach a section and Joe teaches a section, and it's going to be the same content, but the lens is different, right? On how the patients we've supported. He's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. So I highly do recommend taking classes when you have the option of one or the other, one, they're pre-approved, so you know that it's going to count towards the 10 courses, but two, we are all certified child life specialists working in the field actively. So I do get creative with you guys in the prep class, and resumes aren't part of applying for internship, but if we have time, I tend to look at resumes and I offer support and feedback on that. And there's ways to get creative in sharing the classes that you've taken, because I think Kristen from her internship hat would be able to say that she'd feel really good about seeing an application that has a lot of classes that are taught by child life specialists and that are very specific to child life versus the ones that are more general. Not one and bad or better or worse, but it's just you're able to think that okay, they're learning hands-on and experience, from a child life specialist versus maybe someone who studied child development. If that makes sense.
Exactly what she said. Any other questions before we say goodbye? We'll give it another final thoughts. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time and your energy. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. We'll look forward to hearing from you guys.